Before we begin, if you're fascinated by true crime, unsolved mysteries, and the cases that still leave investigators searching for answers, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss a new investigation. Now, imagine waking up on Christmas morning only to discover that 5 children have vanished without a trace after a house fire. Were they victims of a tragic accident, or did someone take them into the darkness? This is the haunting mystery of the Sodder children, one of America's most enduring unsolved disappearances. Let's begin. Christmas Eve, 1945. In the quiet Appalachian town of Fayetteville, West Virginia, the Sodder family gathered inside their warm home, celebrating one of the happiest nights of the year. The children laughed as they admired their presents, while their parents enjoyed the peaceful holiday atmosphere. But before dawn, that joy would turn into unimaginable horror. A devastating fire would consume the house, and by sunrise, 5 children would be gone. No confirmed human remains would ever be found, and for the next several decades, their disappearance would become one of America's most chilling unsolved mysteries. Just a few hours later, the peaceful silence of Christmas night was shattered. A fire suddenly erupted inside the Sodder home, spreading with terrifying speed. George and Jenny Sodder fought desperately to save every one of their children. Amid the chaos, smoke, and collapsing flames, they managed to escape with some of their family. But 5 of their children never made it out. In the confusion, they seemed to vanish into the burning house without a trace. When the fire was finally extinguished, investigators reached a conclusion that seemed straightforward: the 5 missing children had died in the blaze. But as the ashes were carefully examined, something didn't make sense. Despite the intensity of the fire, no confirmed human remains belonging to the children were recovered. The shocking discovery left George and Jenny with a question that would haunt them for the rest of their lives. If the children had truly perished in the fire, where were they? As investigators closed the case, George and Jenny Sodder refused to accept the official explanation. They knew every corner of their home, and they couldn't understand how 5 children could disappear without leaving any confirmed trace behind. The more they questioned the investigation, the more strange details began to emerge. What first looked like a tragic accident was slowly becoming something far more mysterious. To understand why this case remains unsolved, we first need to know the family at its center. George and Jenny Sodder were devoted parents raising 10 children in the small town of Fayetteville, West Virginia. Friends and neighbors described them as hardworking, generous, and deeply devoted to one another. Their home was often filled with laughter, making what happened that Christmas night even more heartbreaking. George Sodder had immigrated from Italy as a young man, determined to build a better life in America. Through years of hard work, he established a successful trucking business and earned the respect of many people in his community. He believed deeply in honesty, hard work, and providing every opportunity possible for his family. By 1945, it seemed he had achieved the American dream. The Sodder household was never quiet. With 10 children growing up under one roof, every day brought energy, laughter, and the occasional chaos that comes with a large family. Meals were shared together, stories were exchanged around the dinner table, and every holiday became a celebration. It was a home built on love, a place where everyone believed tomorrow would be brighter than today. Christmas Eve arrived with excitement. The youngest children admired their new toys while the older siblings helped tidy the house after the evening's celebration. Outside, the cold winter air settled over Fayetteville, and the streets grew quiet. It seemed like an ordinary holiday night, one that would soon be remembered for all the wrong reasons. As the evening came to an end, George and Jenny told the younger children it was time for bed. But a few of the older children asked if they could stay up a little longer to play with their new Christmas gifts. The parents agreed, unaware that this simple decision would become one of the last normal moments the family would ever share together. At around 12:30 in the morning, the peaceful night was interrupted by the ringing of the telephone. Jenny Sodder answered the call, expecting to hear a relative wishing the family a Merry Christmas. Instead, an unfamiliar woman's voice asked for someone Jenny had never heard of. In the background, strange laughter and the sound of glasses clinking echoed through the line. After politely ending the call, Jenny thought little of the odd conversation and returned to bed. She had no way of knowing that this mysterious phone call would later become one of the most discussed clues in the entire case. After hanging up the phone, Jenny walked through the house one last time. She noticed that some of the lights were still on downstairs and that a few of the older children had fallen asleep without turning them off. Thinking nothing of it, she switched off the lights, checked that everything was secure, and quietly returned to bed. The house once again fell silent beneath the cold Christmas sky, and not long after returning to bed, Jenny was suddenly awakened by a strange smell. At first, she thought it might be smoke from the fireplace. But within moments, the odor became stronger. She opened her bedroom door and was horrified to see flames climbing the walls near the office where electrical wiring and a telephone box were located. The family's worst nightmare had just begun. Jenny immediately screamed for George as the fire spread rapidly through the house. Smoke poured into the rooms, making it difficult to breathe. The parents rushed from room to room, desperately waking their sleeping children. Within seconds, the quiet home that had been filled with Christmas joy became a scene of fear, confusion, and desperate cries for help. George managed to guide several of his children out through the front door. One by one, they escaped into the freezing winter night, coughing from the smoke and watching their home burn before their eyes. But as George counted the children standing outside, his heart sank. 5 of them were missing. They were still trapped somewhere inside the burning house. Without hesitation, George rushed back toward the house, determined to save the children still inside. His first instinct was to climb through an upstairs window using the ladder he always kept beside the house. But when he reached the spot where it should have been, the ladder was gone. In the middle of the worst night of his life, one of the tools he desperately needed had mysteriously disappeared. Desperate to reach the upstairs windows, George abandoned the search for the missing ladder and rushed toward his 2 work trucks. His plan was simple: drive one close to the house, climb onto its roof, and reach the children trapped above. But when he turned the ignition, nothing happened. He tried the second truck with the same result. Earlier that day, both vehicles had been working normally. Now, at the moment he needed them most, both engines remained silent. As George searched desperately for another way to reach the children, the fire continued to consume the house. Within a short time, the intense heat weakened the wooden structure beyond repair. With a deafening crash, part of the roof collapsed into the flames, sending sparks and burning debris high into the freezing night sky. Any remaining hope of reaching the upstairs rooms disappeared in an instant. Neighbors quickly noticed the enormous fire and rushed to help in any way they could. Some tried calling the local fire department, while others searched desperately for water or tools that might slow the flames. But the hours passed with no firefighters in sight. By the time help finally arrived, the Sodder home had already been reduced to smoldering ruins. As the first light of morning spread across Fayetteville, the fire had burned itself out. Where a warm family home had stood only hours before, there was now little more than blackened rubble and drifting smoke. George and Jenny searched the ruins in disbelief, hoping for any sign that their missing children had survived. Instead, they were left with silence and questions that would endure for generations. Investigators initially concluded that the 5 missing children had died in the fire. Yet as the ashes were examined, George and Jenny struggled to understand the findings. They could not reconcile the official explanation with what they believed they were seeing. The doubts that emerged in those first days would eventually grow into one of America's most enduring unsolved mysteries. As the days passed, George and Jenny replayed every moment of that terrible night. The more they thought about what had happened, the more questions emerged. The mysterious phone call, the trucks that wouldn't start, the missing ladder, and the speed of the fire all seemed too unusual to ignore. What had first appeared to be a tragic accident was beginning to look like something far more mysterious. As George replayed the events of that terrible night, one detail continued to trouble him. The wooden ladder he always kept beside the house had disappeared just when he needed it most. It hadn't been destroyed by the fire, it simply wasn't there. Days later, the ladder was reportedly found some distance away, discarded down a nearby embankment. Who had moved it, and why? To George, it felt like more than a coincidence. Another mystery soon came to light. During the fire, the family's telephone had stopped working. At first, everyone assumed the flames had burned through the line. But when technicians later examined it, they reportedly discovered that the telephone wire had not simply burned, it had been cut. If that was true, someone may have intentionally prevented the family from calling for help. The delayed response from the local fire department raised even more questions. Despite the fire burning for hours, firefighters did not arrive until after the house had been completely destroyed. The delay was later attributed to problems with the town's emergency communication system. Still, George couldn't help wondering whether a faster response might have changed everything. As the investigation continued, another puzzling detail emerged. George questioned whether the fire had been hot enough to completely destroy the bodies of 5 children. Drawing on his own experiences with fires, he believed something about the official explanation did not add up. This question would fuel his search for answers for the rest of his life, becoming one of the central mysteries surrounding the case. Then came the first unexpected report. One witness later claimed to have seen people near the Sodder home on the night of the fire. At the time, the sighting seemed unimportant. But after learning about the missing children, the witness began to wonder whether what they had seen was connected to the tragedy. Although the account could never be fully verified, it added another layer to the growing mystery. As more people came forward, another story surfaced. Some witnesses recalled seeing an unfamiliar vehicle in the area around the time of the fire. No one knew who owned it or why it was there. While investigators could never confirm whether the vehicle was connected to the case, its reported presence became one of the many unanswered questions surrounding that Christmas night. In the months that followed, several people claimed they might have seen some of the missing children after the fire. One reported account came from a waitress, who believed she had served children resembling the Sodder siblings while they were accompanied by unfamiliar adults. The claim was never verified, but it became another lead George felt compelled to investigate. Determined that no one would forget his children, George erected a large billboard featuring their photographs along a busy highway. Thousands of travelers passed it every year, reading the appeal for information. The sign stood not only as a request for help, but also as a powerful reminder that the Sodder family had never given up hope. Although the years continued to pass, the people of Fayetteville never completely forgot the tragedy. Neighbors shared stories, newspapers revisited the mystery, and each new rumor reignited hope that answers might finally emerge. What had begun as a local disaster had become a mystery woven into the history of the entire community. Over the years, reports surfaced from different parts of the country. Some people believed they had spoken with children resembling the missing siblings. Others claimed to recognize familiar faces in passing. Most of these stories could never be confirmed, but each one was carefully investigated. For George and Jenny, even the faintest possibility was enough to keep hope alive for another day. Friends sometimes urged George to accept the official explanation and leave the past behind. But every time he looked at the photographs of his missing children, he made the same silent promise: he would never stop searching. As long as there was even a single unanswered question, he believed there was still reason to hope. That promise would define the rest of his life. Years after the fire, the disappearance of the 5 Sodder children remained one of the most talked about mysteries in Fayetteville. Neighbors still shared memories of that Christmas night, while local newspapers occasionally revisited the case. For many people, the unanswered questions had become part of the town's history. Although time moved forward, the mystery itself seemed frozen, waiting for someone to finally uncover the truth. As one decade passed into another, many original witnesses grew older, and some important memories began to fade. Yet the central mystery remained unchanged. Investigators continued reviewing reports, comparing witness statements, and searching through preserved records. Every attempt brought new discussions, but none provided the definitive evidence needed to answer the question that had haunted the Sodder family for so many years. Despite every disappointment, George and Jenny refused to let hope disappear. They preserved family photographs, answered every new lead, and continued believing their missing children might still be alive somewhere. To outsiders, their determination seemed impossible. But for 2 parents who had never received definitive answers, hope became the only thing stronger than grief. As magazines, newspapers, and television programs revisited the story, interest in the Sodder case spread far beyond West Virginia. Millions of people encountered the mystery for the first time, each forming their own opinion about what had happened. Some believed the children died in the fire, while others became convinced they had been kidnapped. Decades later, the debate still continues. As the years passed, one theory gained more attention than any other: the possibility that the 5 children had been kidnapped before or during the fire. Supporters pointed to the mysterious phone call, the missing ladder, the trucks that refused to start, the reported cut telephone line, and witness sightings made before and after the fire. While these details raise difficult questions, no investigation has ever conclusively proven that a kidnapping took place. Even today, the theory remains one of the most debated aspects of the Sodder mystery. Another debate has continued for decades. Could the fire really have been intense enough to leave so little behind? Some fire experts have explained that extremely hot fires can destroy much of the human body under certain conditions. George Sodder, however, remained unconvinced. Based on his own experience with fires, he believed more evidence should have remained. Without complete forensic records from that night, the question has never been settled. Investigators repeatedly returned to one unusual detail: the mysterious telephone call Jenny received shortly before the fire. Was it simply a wrong number placed at an unfortunate moment, or had someone intentionally called to distract the family? The identity of the woman on the other end of the line was never confirmed. What seemed insignificant at first would later become one of the case's most discussed mysteries. George never forgot the moment both of his work trucks failed to start. Earlier that day, they had been operating normally. Yet when every second mattered, neither engine responded. Whether the failure was an unfortunate coincidence or the result of outside interference has never been established. Even today, the silent trucks remain one of the many unanswered questions surrounding that Christmas night. The missing ladder remained another troubling mystery. If George had reached the upstairs windows in time, the outcome might have been very different. Days later, the ladder was reportedly discovered away from its usual place, raising even more questions. Was it moved accidentally, taken as a prank, or deliberately removed? Despite years of investigation, no verified explanation has ever answered that question. By this point, the Sodder case had become far more than a local tragedy. Newspapers, investigators, historians, and curious readers across America continued debating the evidence. Every new theory seemed to answer one question while creating 2 more. Instead of fading into history, the mystery only grew stronger, becoming one of the most enduring unsolved cases in American history and continuing to inspire new investigations decades later. Although years had passed since the fire, George and Jenny refused to remove their children's belongings. The bedrooms remained almost exactly as they had been on Christmas Eve. Toys stayed on the shelves, neatly folded clothes rested in their drawers, and treasured family photographs remained in place. They believed that if their 5 missing children ever returned home, everything should be waiting for them just as they had left it. For the Sodders, hope became stronger than time itself, carrying them through years of uncertainty and heartbreak. Image prompt, 16:9. As the decades passed, even members of the extended Sodder family found themselves reaching different conclusions. Some believed the children had tragically died in the fire and that accepting the loss was the only path toward healing. Others remained convinced the children had survived and had been taken away that night. Without definitive evidence, neither belief could be proven. The mystery continued to shape family conversations, leaving generations searching for answers that never came. George refused to limit his search to a single town or even a single state. Whenever a promising lead arrived, he gathered maps, family photographs, witness statements, and newspaper clippings before setting out once again. He traveled across highways and small communities, speaking with strangers and following every possible clue. Although each journey ended without certainty, he believed that stopping the search would mean abandoning his children, and that was something he could never bring himself to do. As newspapers and magazines continued revisiting the story, the disappearance of the Sodder children spread far beyond West Virginia. Readers across America debated every clue, every witness statement, and every competing theory. Some believed the official investigation had overlooked critical evidence, while others trusted the original conclusion. The case gradually transformed from a local tragedy into one of the nation's most enduring unsolved mysteries, capturing the imagination of generation after generation. Even many years later, independent researchers and investigators continued returning to the Sodder case, hoping that careful analysis or fresh perspectives might uncover something earlier investigations had missed. They revisited witness statements, compared historical photographs, reconstructed timelines, and examined surviving documents. Despite advances in investigative methods, the central question remained unchanged. What truly happened to the 5 Sodder children on that cold Christmas night in 1945? Decades after the fire, the Sodder family received an unexpected photograph in the mail. It appeared to show an unidentified adult man whose facial features reminded some family members of one of the missing boys, Louis Sodder. The envelope contained only a brief message and no return address. George and Jenny studied the photograph for countless hours, wondering whether it represented the breakthrough they had waited for, or simply another heartbreaking mystery. To this day, the photograph remains one of the most debated pieces of evidence connected to the case. As the years passed, many people encouraged George and Jenny to accept the official conclusion and move on with their lives. But for them, moving on was impossible. Every Christmas brought back memories of the night their family was forever changed. They continued believing that somewhere, somehow, their 5 missing children might still be alive. That hope shaped every decision they made and became the reason they never stopped searching for answers. Refusing to let the investigation disappear, George increased the reward for information that could reveal what had happened to the children. The reward attracted attention across the country, leading to new telephone calls, handwritten letters, and anonymous tips. Although many appeared promising at first, none provided the conclusive proof the family desperately needed. Still, George believed that one genuine lead could change everything. As the decades passed, the number of theories surrounding the Sodder case continued to grow. Some believed the children had been kidnapped by organized criminals. Others maintained that the official explanation, that the children had died in the fire, was the most likely answer. Additional theories pointed to mistaken identity or hidden family connections. Despite countless discussions and investigations, none of these ideas has ever been supported by conclusive evidence. The mystery remains exactly that, a mystery. Modern fire investigators continue studying historical cases like the Sodder tragedy to better understand how intense fires behave and how evidence can change over time. Advances in forensic science have answered many questions in similar investigations, but they cannot fully reconstruct every detail from a fire that occurred decades ago. Because much of the original evidence no longer exists, some questions surrounding the Sodder case may never be answered with complete certainty. What began as a devastating house fire on Christmas Eve gradually became one of the most enduring mysteries in American history. Every clue seemed to raise another question. The missing ladder, the strange phone call, the silent trucks, the reported cut telephone line, and later witness accounts combined to create a puzzle that has never been completely solved. More than 80 years later, people are still searching for the missing pieces. Cases like the disappearance of the Sodder children continue to captivate people because they leave room for unanswered questions. Without definitive proof, every generation has revisited the evidence and reached its own conclusions. Some remain convinced the official explanation was correct. Others believe something extraordinary happened that Christmas night. The absence of certainty has ensured that the mystery never truly faded from public memory. After decades of investigations, countless interviews, and thousands of pages of reports, one question still remains unanswered. What truly happened to the 5 Sodder children? Were they victims of a tragic fire, or did something far more mysterious unfold that Christmas night? Without definitive evidence, no one can answer with certainty. But perhaps that is exactly why this story continues to fascinate people around the world, reminding us that some mysteries refuse to be forgotten. Long after George and Jenny Sodder's tireless search came to an end, the questions they asked continued to echo through the years. Historians, journalists, researchers, and ordinary people still study the case, hoping to discover something that earlier generations may have overlooked. Although time has carried the tragedy further into history, the determination of 2 parents who refused to give up remains one of the most powerful parts of the story. The disappearance of the Sodder children reminds us how difficult investigations can become when crucial evidence is lost and key questions remain unanswered. It also shows the importance of carefully examining facts while recognizing the difference between confirmed evidence and speculation. Even after decades of discussion, the case encourages investigators and curious minds alike to approach every mystery with patience, honesty, and an open mind. More than 8 decades have passed since that cold Christmas night in Fayetteville, yet the mystery continues to spark conversations around the world. Every generation examines the same evidence, asks the same difficult questions, and wonders whether the complete truth will ever be known. Until new evidence is discovered, the disappearance of the 5 Sodder children will remain one of America's most enduring unsolved mysteries. After examining every major clue, every reported witness account, and every competing theory, the central mystery remains unresolved. Was the official explanation correct, or does another answer lie hidden somewhere in the missing pieces of this remarkable case? The evidence has been debated for generations, and thoughtful people continue to reach different conclusions. Perhaps the next important perspective belongs to you. Thank you for joining us as we explored one of history's most fascinating unsolved mysteries. If you found this documentary informative, consider supporting the channel by liking the video, subscribing, and sharing your thoughts in the comments below. Your engagement helps us continue researching and producing thoughtful documentaries about real historical mysteries. Until our next investigation, stay curious and keep asking questions. For most families, Christmas Eve is a time of celebration, warmth, and treasured memories. But for the Sodder family, December 24, 1945, became a night that would forever divide their lives into before and after. Every Christmas that followed carried both love and unimaginable loss. The lights on the tree no longer represented only joy, they became a reminder of 5 children whose fate was never known. As the years became decades, the story of the Sodder children was passed from one generation to the next. Parents shared it with their children, journalists revisited the investigation, and historians preserved the evidence. Although many of the original witnesses are no longer alive, the questions they left behind continue to inspire new discussions and fresh curiosity around the world. Some mysteries remain unforgettable not because of the answers they provide, but because of the questions they leave behind. The Sodder case reminds us that behind every investigation are real people whose lives were forever changed. It also reminds us why careful research, honest reporting, and compassion for those affected remain essential whenever we examine events from the past. Even today, advances in historical research and forensic science occasionally reopen discussions surrounding long unsolved cases. Whether or not the Sodder mystery is ever solved, the pursuit of truth continues to inspire investigators, historians, and curious minds alike. Every unanswered question reminds us that history still holds secrets waiting to be discovered, and nearly a lifetime has passed since flames consumed the Sodder family home, yet the mystery remains unsolved. Whether the truth was lost in the fire or hidden somewhere beyond it, no one knows for certain. What remains is the extraordinary determination of a family that refused to stop searching. Their story continues to remind us that some mysteries are never truly forgotten, and that hope can survive even the darkest of nights. The passing of time has answered many mysteries throughout history, but not this one. The disappearance of the 5 Sodder children continues to echo across generations because it leaves behind questions that have never been fully resolved. Every new reader, researcher, or viewer approaches the evidence with fresh eyes, hoping to notice something that others may have missed. George and Jenny Sodder never claimed to have all the answers. What they carried instead was something equally powerful: hope. Even when every lead ended in disappointment, they continued searching because they believed their children deserved to be found. Their unwavering determination has become one of the most inspiring aspects of this remarkable story. What began as a heartbreaking tragedy in a small West Virginia town eventually became one of America's most widely discussed unsolved mysteries. Books, documentaries, newspaper articles, and conversations have kept the story alive for decades. Each retelling ensures that the 5 missing children are remembered and that the search for truth is never completely forgotten. Although many investigators have reached different conclusions, the final chapter of this story has never been written. Until new evidence is discovered, the fate of the 5 missing Sodder children remains unknown. That uncertainty has transformed this case into more than a historical mystery. It has become a lasting reminder that not every question receives an answer. Thank you for joining us as we carefully explored one of history's most enduring unsolved mysteries. If you found this documentary informative, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Which theory do you find most convincing, and why? Share your perspective respectfully in the comments below. If you enjoy thoughtful documentaries like this one, consider subscribing so you won't miss our next investigation into another fascinating historical mystery. More than 8 decades have passed, yet the disappearance of the Sodder children continues to challenge investigators, historians, and curious minds alike. Many mysteries eventually fade as memories disappear and evidence is lost. This one has endured because the unanswered questions remain as compelling today as they were on that cold Christmas morning in 1945. Researchers continue studying historical records, comparing witness accounts, and examining preserved documents in hopes that one overlooked detail might one day provide new insight. While the available evidence may never tell the complete story, every careful investigation helps preserve the facts and keeps the search for truth alive for future generations. Beyond every theory and every investigation were real people whose lives were changed forever. George and Jenny Sodder were not searching for headlines or recognition, they were searching for their children. Remembering their determination reminds us that behind every unsolved mystery is a family whose questions deserve compassion as much as they deserve answers. Throughout history, there have been countless unsolved mysteries that continue to inspire research and discussion. The Sodder case stands apart because it combines tragedy, uncertainty, and decades of relentless determination. Whether the complete truth is ever discovered or not, its place in the history of unsolved mysteries remains secure, perhaps somewhere, hidden within an overlooked document, a forgotten photograph, or a witness account waiting to be rediscovered, lies the missing piece of this remarkable puzzle. Until that day comes, the disappearance of the 5 Sodder children will remain one of America's most enduring unsolved mysteries. And as long as questions remain, the search for truth continues. Even after all these years, the Sodder case continues to invite careful examination. Historians, journalists, and true crime researchers still revisit the evidence, not because they expect easy answers, but because every unsolved case deserves to be understood as completely as possible. The search for truth often continues long after headlines disappear. Behind every clue and every unanswered question were 5 children whose futures remain unknown. While history has preserved many details of the investigation, it is equally important to remember the lives at the center of the story. Their disappearance continues to be remembered not only as a mystery, but as a profound family tragedy. The Sodder mystery also reminds us why careful investigation matters. Facts, witness statements, physical evidence, and thoughtful analysis form the foundation of every serious inquiry. When evidence is incomplete or lost, certainty becomes difficult, and responsible investigators must distinguish between what is known, what is possible, and what remains unproven. After exploring the evidence, the witness accounts, and the competing theories, what conclusion do you find most convincing? Do you believe the official explanation tells the whole story, or do you think important questions remain unanswered? Whatever your perspective, respectful discussion keeps historical mysteries like this alive and encourages thoughtful examination rather than speculation alone. Some mysteries may never receive complete answers. Yet the search itself has value, preserving history, honoring those affected, and inspiring future generations to keep asking difficult questions. The story of the Sodder children reminds us that hope, determination, and the pursuit of truth can endure far longer than uncertainty itself. Today, the Sodder family home is gone, but the silence left behind still speaks to everyone who learns about this case. The fire ended in a single night, yet the questions it created have lasted for generations. For many, the greatest mystery is not simply what happened, but whether the complete truth was ever known at all. Every unsolved mystery leaves behind a space where certainty should be. The Sodder case is one of those rare stories that continues to challenge every generation that studies it. As new people discover the evidence, they bring fresh perspectives and new questions, ensuring that the search for understanding never truly comes to an end. This story is remembered not only because it remains unsolved, but because it reflects the extraordinary determination of a family that refused to surrender hope. George and Jenny spent much of their lives searching for answers. Their perseverance reminds us that behind every historical investigation are real people whose love for one another never disappeared. After examining the evidence, the witness accounts, and the many theories surrounding this case, we'd love to hear your perspective. Which explanation do you find most convincing, and why? Share your thoughts respectfully in the comments below. Thoughtful conversations help keep historical mysteries alive and encourage future generations to continue asking important questions. Thank you for joining us on this journey through one of America's most enduring unsolved mysteries. If you enjoyed this documentary, please consider liking the video and subscribing for more carefully researched stories from history's greatest mysteries. Until our next investigation, stay curious, keep asking questions, and remember that sometimes the greatest mysteries are the ones that history has yet to solve.